Hello, everyone, and welcome to Superman Homepage Live, brought to you by supermanhomepage.com, the number one Superman fan site in the world. In this, our November 28th, 2022 show, we have a special guest. Phillip Kennedy Johnson, writer of Action Comics, is about to join us live. But before we get to that, let me introduce you to my co-host, Mr. Michael Bailey. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Hey, Steve. How's it going?
Doing well, and yourself?
I am excited.
Yes.
I was early tonight. I mean,
You
and
were, you
everything.
were.
So,
Very good. Well, we do have a special guest tonight, and fans may want to get involved in tonight's show. So, how do they do that?
it's really simple. Just go to supermanhomepage.com/live and click the call now button. You'll be put into our green room, and you can watch the show as you're waiting. If you are wanting to use your fancy phone thingy, you can use the QR code that we have to I guess that would be the left of me, even though I want to say the right, um, and scan that. If we do take callers tonight and you are using your smartphone, please use your headphones because the sound quality on that is really weird.
Yes, and if you're a little bit shy and don't want to get on the phone tonight, or we don't have time to take callers tonight, then feel free to participate in the comments there on YouTube. Michael and I keep an eye on your comments as we go along tonight. Any questions you might have, we'll try to insert them into our interview as we go along tonight. But we want to thank our sponsors and patrons, Douglas Meacham, John Patrick Van Pelt, and Tina Murray. And don't forget, if you want to help support the Superman homepage, simply click the join button below. Tonight we also have super chats, super comments, super thanks. There's a little dollar symbol there on YouTube. Click on that. A slider will appear on your screen. You can click on that, decide on the dollar amount you're willing to donate, and we can feature your comment or question live on the screen as we go on along tonight. But before we do that, let me introduce our very special guest tonight, Phillip Kennedy Johnson. Welcome, Phillip.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to be part of our show tonight. Really appreciate you taking the time out. I'm sure you're a very busy man and have many people trying to get your attention left, right, and center.
Well, I mean, we're all busy, right? I'm happy to be on here, and yeah, I've seen your show, and you guys are great. So thanks for thinking of me.
Thank you very much. Well, let's get into talking about what everyone wants to hear about, and that's the fact that you are writing Action Comics and have been doing so, writing Superman for a while now. Michael, I'll hand over to you if you want to take the reins to start with.
Yeah, I just for real quick going back to Future State. Did you know that you were going to be writing action when you wrote your Future State issues? And if so, was that a way for you to get into Superman as a character?
Yes, when I was approached to do Future State, it was not just that. They actually asked me to write Superman and Action together, with the understanding that I'd be setting up Tom for the Superman Son of Kal-El book with the Superman title, and then Action would be my book going forward. um, Action Comics was going to be like, we knew we were going to do the Warworld saga, and Future State was going to be kind of one of the. There was I don't think it's a big surprise to anyone that there were elements of the 5G plans in the idea of the Warworld saga. The 5G stuff. Um, there were just so many amazingly creative ideas that came out of that premise, and a lot of it we wanted to do a lot of it at DC. We just wanted to make sure we got to everything in an organic way, so we weren't just flooding the shop with here's 50 new ideas and they're all completely different than everything and everything's on its head. There would have been a lot of books kind of left behind if that was the case. So we wanted to get everything more organically, and there were a lot of things that we were building to with the cosmic books that we wanted to use in the Superman title. So the Future State book was a way to incorporate a lot of those a lot of those 5G ideas, just kind of like a snapshot of what the future of the DC universe looked like. And specifically, Future State Superman Worlds of War was going to be a kind of like a snapshot of what was going to come in the next couple of years on the Action Comics title. So yeah, that was the idea. Like, if I get if the truck with my name on it got me after those first two issues, like the summary of how I feel about Superman in a nutshell is all in Future State. It was kind of a love letter to Superman 400, that old anthology that was all about Superman in the future. That was it was really just kind of a homage to that issue, with the first issue being what we how we view Superman, how we as humanity view Superman, and then the second issue being how he feels about us. So that was what Warworld Saga, excuse me, that's what Worlds of War Future State was meant to be. And then I just kind of showed a snapshot of what was to come in the Warworld Saga, and then kind of made it all come true throughout the next couple of years.
Very cool. So what is it about the character of Mongol that makes him an appealing villain for you?
To me, a lot of Superman's best villains are a true opposite to him in different ways. I mean, Lex, of course, because Superman is he represents the best of humanity, even though he's not human himself. Like, he's an alien that comes to us and shows us how best to be human. And Lex is human and should have been the best of us, and instead that all the potential was squandered through ego. Whereas Superman is the champion of the oppressed. Lex is nothing but self. Like, he's just a creature of pure ego. Darkseid, of course, is like the wrathful god, and Mongol has sometimes been portrayed a little one-dimensional for my taste, and I always thought he could be really great, but I don't know much about him. I never knew why. Why is he this way? What does he want? Nobody's just evil, right? Nobody sees themselves as the bad guy. So why is he this way? Who is he? Where's he come from? And the Warworld Saga was a way to take a one-dimensional villain that could be great and try to make him great. So one of several mission statements for the Warworld Saga was to make Mongol the true opposite of Superman, to make him Superman's opposite in the way that Lex is, in the way that Metallo is, in the way that Darkseid is. But the way that Mongol is his opposite is, again, if Superman is the champion of the oppressed, the opposite of that truly would be like an intergalactic slaver, somebody who has built this, cult of personality and hero worship around his own worship and around the concept of dominance. So I kind of took all my pinup, rage and sadness and everything about human trafficking, and kind of, just worked out a way to get to Mongol, where he's a true opposite to Superman, and that he is all about just dominating and enslaving races across the multiverse. So that's what he is to me. I wanted to show his culture. I wanted to show the culture of Warworld, show how he became what he is through the backstory that we did with the origin of the first Mongol, and this Mongol's backstory as a child and all that, as we showed Superman's story. That annual actually went a long way towards shaping who this Mongol is, where Superman, we see him on his way to becoming kind of an ordinary kid who's given these crazy powers, like he's using them the way that most kids would, like to punish a bully, just kind of getting one up on the kid he doesn't like. And his mom course corrects him towards being exceptional. Meanwhile, on Warworld, Mongol is on his way. He has tendencies towards the compassionate, and his mother cures him of that, because Warworld's a place where that can't be tolerated. It's like they wouldn't survive. So to make sure that her son survives, his mother instills real cruelty in him, and just reminds him that the Warzone does not protect. The Warzone thinks only of himself, and this is how they survive. This is why we're the strongest. So yeah, I really wanted Mongol to be a true opposite to Clark in that way.
Yeah, I love that parallel in that annual. It was very cool to see the two, as you say, the course corrections that the mothers had, and I think it's really important to have, to show the Kent's involvement in making Clark Kent Superman, or help him become
Completely.
Superman.
Yeah, his genetic legacy comes from his parents, like his great physical gifts and the history that makes him who he is. But he learns to be human from the Kents. He learns to be, purely compassionate and empathetic, from them. So I really, that's just such a crucial part of who he is, as we've seen in stories like Red Sun and other ones where the Kent's influence is missing. It's such a crucial part, maybe the most important part of who he is.
Now, some writers and creators say that Superman is hard to write because of his power set, and maybe to a certain extent the selflessness of the character. We were kind of chatting a little bit before we came on about how I feel like your Superman has the selflessness. He's empathetic, but when he makes a decision, if he thinks it's the right thing to do, he does it. He's all in on it. What is your approach to writing the character? Like when you're sitting down to write him, what do you think of him, like, personality wise?
Oh man, it's a broad question.
Yeah.
What do I think of Superman personality wise? He is the living. I've said. Forgive me if I'm sure people here have heard me say this before, but to me, he's the living antithesis to the cliche that absolute power corrupts absolutely. He is the living embodiment of why that's bullshit, or should be. Like there's no reason that absolute power has to corrupt. It just always does. Like what if it didn't? And Superman is the answer to that question. He's the person who, with godlike powers, who wields it with absolute compassion and humility. So that's what I think about every time I'm writing him. I just think about those things. I remind myself throughout. Anytime I'm writing an issue, the thing I think about, well, a couple things. One is that I always want there to be some kind of a Christopher Reeve type moment where he says or does something very simple that kind of makes everyone, should kind of give this electric feeling of, that makes you feel the way John Williams music does in those fanfares, where it's just like, oh, I just want to be that, I just want to, it just inspires you and you want to be that thing that he is. I'm trying to find those moments when usually just like some little, like he does something in some like super short, concise line of dialogue that people can walk away from the issue with and hold on to that one thing. Like there was an issue in Warworld Saga that people tend to share a lot, in which let's see, Midnighter, he's like they've gotten their asses completely kicked, and Midnighter breaks into the dungeon to get him out. And he's like, "Come on, we're leaving." He's like, "I'm not going anywhere," and he's just been kicked to shit. Like Superman is just completely fallen apart, and he's like, "I'm not going anywhere." He's like, "Are you serious? Like, you know what I did to get down here? We have to go. Like, we completely lost. Two of us are dead. The rest of us need to go." He said, "I'm not leaving." And Midnighter says, if we destroy the Star Forges, you'll get your powers back. We can get out of here, or you can, you can be strong again. He's like, "We can't do that. If we do that, like thousands of people will die. Those Star Forges are holding this planet together. We can't do that." And Midnighter is just furious. He's like, "Do you think we won this thing? Like, what do you? We came here for you. Not the bad guys cheered as we got killed. Do our lives really matter less to you than theirs?" And he said, "No, not less, but not more." Anyway, he just those little moments. Sorry, I messed it up. He said, "Do their lives matter more than ours?" He said, "No, not more, but not less." There has to be some little moment like that in the book where everything that he is summed up in the book, usually through action and also through some little lines. So I try to get that in there so that they just are reminded very clearly who Superman is. Let's see. I said two things. There's that, and just a reminder that the powers should only be there to remind us how incorruptible he is. It can't just be, look at this awesome thing I can do. It needs to be, we're reminded that he can do anything, but he chooses to open the back door of a car and make sure that the kids are okay. He chooses to, while he's pushing planets around or going back in time to stop a bullet or whatever he's doing, he chooses to, to open the door for somebody carrying groceries, and just those things matter. So those are the things I'm thinking about with Superman. The only reason the powers are there is to remind us that you can have absolute power and not misuse it.
Yeah,
It
perfect.
gladdens, yeah, exactly. It gladdens my heart to hear you talking the way you are about Superman. It's just hitting all the right buttons for me. Fans have been commenting about this one in the YouTube chat, and it was announced recently that the secret identity aspect of the character was returning, and you had some great quotes about him in the comicbook.com article about how exciting it is to have that back. Was this something that you were always working towards from the beginning, or was this a more recent development?
Honestly, no. It was Superman's truth and justice, right? So I'm not going to lie to you here. It's not something that I've been working towards the whole time.
Hmm.
Um, I honestly didn't know which way it was going to go because I could see Superman's been around so long. Some character, even though comics are generally kind of about the illusion of change, where we see these big, crazy changes happening, like, oh my God, so and so's dead, or Batman's back's been broken, or everyone knows Spider-Man's identity, or like these huge, huge shifts. But then it always kind of it swings back towards the status quo or a status quo. But sometimes when a character has been around a super long time, there are very slow, glacial changes that happen over the course of their time. And Superman is one of those. Like back in the day, nobody knew who he was except for his own Earth parents. And he was always playing these mean little games on Lois, like, haha, she doesn't know who I am. Um, and eventually, later on, he he tells her who he is. And then after that, they get married. And then they have John. And like there have been these very, very slow changes to, now Superman's a father. Um, and part of me would have been okay if telling the world that he was Clark Kent became the next incremental change in his evolution. I would have been okay with that. The reason being, I could never quite square the circle of Superman being the paragon of virtue that he is, of being um, the this bastion of truth, and lied to everyone constantly. I was like, it doesn't quite make sense, especially like the mean little gags on Lois and all that, and that part's gone. But even just telling people that like when the Superman and Lois show came out, the idea that his kids didn't know that their dad was Superman just seemed crazy to me. Um, but the excuse was always, well, yeah, but he has to keep everyone safe. So even though I understood that we were losing something by having him tell the world who he is, I understood that it was a chance to really blow the lid off and tell some completely new stories.
Hmm.
But so it was a real pro and con kind of a thing. I was like, well, here are the things that we lose, and here are the things that we've gained. Honestly, the only real net benefits that we had were that one, you could just tear the roof off and completely change the dynamic between Superman and all of his villains and every other character. Like everything's different now, and there could be a big, there's a lot of fodder there for stories in the short term. Um, and the other benefit is that he can really be true to himself. Like that capital T truth really shines through if he can just tell everyone who he is. But the thing that we lose is the Lois and Clark relationship, kind of like that iconic thing, like the iconic image of Clark Kent and the hat and the glasses and the tie and the shirt coming open and the reds there. Like he's one of us. He's walking around like one of us, doing his job, making a little bit less money than maybe he ought to, getting up early, going home late, and then something happens and he becomes who he really is, like who we need him to be. And whenever you see that moment where it's like, now I'm done being normal and now I'm going to be a hero and save everyone. And that's that moment. Even now, just literally doing this motion, I feel this electric kind of vibration in my body, like I can do this. And I hear that, it's just this amazing moment. So between that and having the relationship where Clark and Lois have this secret that they keep, to their family, um, there are just these essential elements to who Clark is, man, that it's just hard to give up. And there are actually specific stories coming up here in which we in which we need that back. So Bendis had reasons for doing what he did with the secret identity thing, and I don't begrudge him that at all. Comics sometimes swing real hard one direction or the next, and yeah, it opened us up for a lot of really big, awesome stories. But for the story that's coming up next, Superman, like Metropolis wide, between my book, Tom's book, Josh's book, those are elements that we need back. This next thing is going to be kind of like almost like a return to the Triangle era, like a real celebration of who Superman is, of his whole mythology, and his family, including like Connor, Kara, the super twins that we just brought from Warworld, other elements of Metropolis, Lex Luthor, just this gesture of like the S in the chest. Like we need all those things to be in place for the celebratory books that are going to be coming out here next year.
Man, I read that Triangle era thing in the interview, and you just said it again, and it just made me happy because that's my era. And I know you can never go home again with those things. But if like a feeling of home can come back, then that's just as good.
Exactly. Yeah, like that's
Yeah.
that's how I feel. Honestly, that's what I've been trying. I wish I could have told all those people. Like I literally get harassed about John, like Agent Down John, every single day. And I wish I could tell people what you just said. Like, I mean, it's yeah, you can't we can't go back. Well, I mean, we can go back because Lee Weeks and Jurgens
Yeah.
are about to tell like a young kid John story again. We can always tell stories set in that time. But the thing that everyone, I wish they would just get past what happened and see what it really is that we missed. That we missed. We missed seeing Superman and Lois in a relationship with as parents of young kids. Like, and we can still see, we can recapture that magic in a way. John's still around. He's okay. We're going to see them being the parents of young kids again and have a lot of those same kind of fun interactions and all those things. Like there's, so like you said, it would have been a mistake to just magic wand what was done away, but we can try to recapture the feelings and the kinds of stories and the kinds of relationships that we lost. So that's kind of the idea.
Nice.
It's my turn.
Yeah, it's your turn. The whole idea of alternating.
Yeah, it's like we've done this before. I think you answered the next question. So until the identity reveal storyline, Clark was the man and Superman was what he could do. With your fresh start, how do you see Clark Kent and Superman? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but like, do you see them as two separate? Like, I know when you're writing them, Lois and Clark together, obviously they both know who he is. But is there something that to Clark, like interacting with the Daily Planet staff, who isn't aware of his identity?
I'm sorry, I actually lost you for just a second.
Oh,
Like, what was
I'm
the question
sorry.
about I missed the last bit. What was the question about the planet staff?
With your fresh start, how do you see Clark Kent and Superman as kind of separate parts of the same character? I guess is the best way to ask that.
I mean, I guess I don't know. Like Clark Kent was always kind of his exploration of humanity. It was his chance to be one of us and to. I mean, if he was only ever in his costume, hovering above us, it's I don't know. It's just a little bit harder to see him as the best example of humanity. If he is literally and visually, like in every way, above us. And to see him walking around as one of us, it's not just a costume. Like Clark is what his parents call him. It's what his wife calls him when she's not calling him Smallville. Um, it's who he is. Like Kara calls him Cal, and that makes sense given her experiences. And the kids call him Superman because that's who he is to them for now. But to the rest of the world, he sees himself as Clark. And so, man, I don't know. I still see him as Clark all the time. Like maybe it's just the nature of the time in which I came aboard the book. Because I mean, and even in like the second issue of Warworld Rising, he flies into the ship and Thao Law's there looking at him, and he's like this gleaming god, like this. He's backlit, and she's like, "Oh my god, it's him!" And he just says, "My name's Clark, and nothing bad's going to happen to you." And it was just so awesome to be
Yeah,
able to say that.
I,
That was
I I twigged that when I read it. I was like, he said he's Clark. Okay, that's significant in terms of who the character is and how he sees himself. So yeah, that makes perfect
yeah,
sense now.
yeah. When he's free to say to introduce himself as whoever, he calls himself Clark.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think I just saw somebody in the chat say both of them are the real are the same. Yeah, somebody says I always see both identities as real. Yeah, that's I guess that's how I see it too. It's hard to describe. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. As I don't
That's good.
see
No,
him.
that no no that
I don't
that
see.
answers the question itself was framed badly. So I
No,
think
dude,
you
no.
actually
That's not
made the
what I mean.
question better.
That's not what I mean at all. It's just hard to.
No, I
There's no element of either one that's like fake per se. I mean, because
Hmm.
I mean, they're back in the day. It depends on who's writing it. Like when you read All Star, which is obviously like a beacon of kick-ass Superman stories. Um, the way he's kind of like slouching over and like coughing and accident he's like accidentally bumping into people to prevent him from getting run over and stuff like that. And the bumbling idiot Clark Kent um, is is great, and I love it. But it's a little, I don't know. It's not quite how I write him myself.
Hmm.
Like when to in my version of the stories, when he's in the glasses and the tie, he is who he would have been if he had just been born in Smallville. And he's the real guy that his parents raised. And when he runs and opens his shirt and flies off, he becomes the person who he's still the son of the Kents, but he's also the kid who found the crystal in the barn and everything. Like then he can really be, I guess, more true to himself in that way. But
Hmm.
he's not. I still feel a little bit gross, honestly, having Clark Kent lie to everyone like, "Oh, I'm so sick, I got to go to the bathroom," and he runs away and knocks down a building. Um, it's just, I just feel weird having Superman bullshit anybody. And I'm sure there's going to be times in which that for the story's sake, he has to because he does have to. He's going to have to hide his identity again in the
Hmm.
future. But I'm not sure yet how I'm going to navigate it. Honestly, I mean, I think Grant handled it just, I mean, beautifully. The thing that I just described, where he's crossing the street and he bumps into the guy, and the guy's super pissed, and Clark just takes it, and then this truck just mows past them both. It would have clearly killed the guy. There's another thing like that in Lex's cell or something, where he bumbles around and trips Lex or something, and he saves him from electrocuting himself. Um, that is just handled so incredibly well, and I admire the hell out of it, especially drawn with Frank Quiley. It was like this perfect marriage of
Hmm.
comics.
Yeah.
Um, but I still have to kind of figure out how I'm going to handle it, because I haven't really had to yet.
I
So
guess it's
we'll see.
that little white lie that you have to tell sometimes to get to the bigger truth of something. It's about picking your battles, I guess, and But yeah, it's an interesting dilemma as a writer. I'm glad I don't have to tackle that. But so what can you tell us about your upcoming run on Action Comics? I'm not looking for spoilers or anything, but what can you tease in terms of what we're going to see?
I want to. Well, as I said, this is a celebration of all things Superman. I know. I mean, the first story that I did was unusual in that it was in a completely different context, in a different costume, with different powers, with a different cast, and it was just long as hell. and and I know a lot of people wanted to get, it's like, come on, get back to, I want to see Jimmy, I want to see Toyman, I want to see all that stuff. And I want to see Lois. A lot of people were complaining that there was no Lois in it, and I totally get that. All that stuff is valid, but we were trying to tell a key Superman story that really got to the heart of who Superman was, and we're trying to do that in a completely different context. Now we have a chance to, we've told that story, a story I'm very, very proud of, and I get to tell a Superman story set in his stomping ground. We get to see, the Kent farm and Metropolis and his wife and family. And I basically, I want to give fans all the things that they've been clamoring for this whole time. I want to see him and Lois. I want to see John, and I want to make people fall in love with John again, hopefully. I mean, that's largely Tom's gig on his own book, but I still care about John a lot. I want people to see John the way I see him. I want people to see the Super Twins, more of them, and fall in love with them the way that I have. And I want to see some of those more complicated dynamics. There we go. Like the images you're showing. I want to see some sex in the sky. We're seeing here. That'll be my legacy, sky banging. Like when this is all said and done.
Well, Frank did it too with in Dark Knight 2. So with Wonder Woman and Superman.
I suppose that's true. Yeah.
So
yeah, like I want to show all the different characters in the super family in a different way. Like I want to make sure that everyone understands who they are at their core. Like not just it's the tall one, here's the one with the cape, here's the one with the jacket, here's the blonde one. I want everyone to see what makes them who they are. Like see them in with their own motivations and who they are and how they view Clark and how they view themselves in the context of the super family. I mean, one of the reasons that Clark became so attached to the Super Twins is that he lost John at basically the same age that those kids are. And when he finds them, they need him, but they're also super abusive. He just kind of wraps them up and like, I'm going to protect you. Part of that is just how, he still feels the loss of John. So now he's back and the kids are there too. And John is also there. And John sees Superman with these two kids that are basically the same age as he was when he was taken. How's John going to feel about that? How's Clark going to feel seeing all that? How are the twins going to view John? So these are all these dynamics that I really want to show. I want to see like a real ensemble cast and see them all bounce off of each other. I'm really excited about it. So that's a big part of the super family. Is a big part of it. Clark is still front and center, though. I don't want anyone to feel like it's not a Superman book. I just wanted to kind of capture the excitement that I had as a kid for the 80-page Giants, where you see these different stories with different characters and get like the whole Superman experience. But I also want to kind of do what I did with Mongol and take some characters that I think look really cool or have had cool moments and give them definitive backstories and make them really complicated and dark and scary, but also like powerful. Metallo is another one who's in his way kind of an opposite to Superman, and I want to see that. I want to show why that is. I want to show why he is another really great foil for Superman and kind of show a more leveled up version of him that can really hang with him.
And what sounds really good about all of that is like back in the 90s, there was like a Superman family, but they really didn't have much to do with each other most of the time. They were all in their own titles, doing their own things. Meanwhile, Batman, the Great Loner, is constantly crossing over with his family.
Right.
And now it's something we were going to ask you about, but you just answered it. It seems like no, they're really going to be together, with Superman kind of at the forefront. But that sounds fantastic. And just, I lost the thread of what I was saying, so I'm just going to go to the next question. I apologize.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I just want to kind of reward fans who have followed the Warworld saga, who kind of went in like, what is this? This doesn't look like a Superman book that I'm used to, and stuck with it. And it was really fun seeing the fan reaction kind of grow more and more positive until they finally got what it was we were doing. And they were all very supportive. And now I want to just kind of give my big thank you. Like, here's a gleaming city of the future, the way Metropolis was always meant to be. So I'm pretty stoked.
There was one of the comments in the chat that a few people have mentioned, and it was something that our reviewer of Action Comics felt that the Warworld saga went on for a fair while. And was it always initially drawn to be that length of a story, or was there some kind of editorial? You got to do so many issues. A lot of people complain these days that writers are writing for the trade and not necessarily, got to fill so many issues per story to fill out the trade. Does that ever come into bear when you're writing? Does editorial ever get into your ear about you've got to make a certain amount of issues when you're writing a story or anything like that?
If they had cracked the whip early on, like you've only got 12 issues and that's all we can give you for the story, I would have made it work with 12.
Hmm.
But we instead, like the expiration date I had on the Warworld saga was always a little bit nebulous. And then that editor left and the new one came in. So I kind of pushed it a little bit further down. Just a little, just a couple of months. But I wasn't right. Yeah. I mean, the whole writing for the trade thing. Yeah, I do that. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm not trying to give you just the best single issue of Superman ever. I'm trying to give you Watchmen, I'm trying to give you Final Crisis or the Phoenix Saga or the Phalanx Saga or the, Age of Apocalypse, like these big, awesome stories that are evergreen that people always come back to as these touchstone stories. I mean, if I had to cut 6 months off of that story, so that we could kind of find an easy place for new readers to get back on or whatever. I don't know, man. It's just not. I don't know. I think we would have kind of lost the forest for the trees. I really think that I do try to make in every issue, I try to have those moments like we talked about. Every issue of the story does matter to me for sure. Like whenever there's going to be an artist change, artists can only work so fast, especially when you're working with these virtuosos like that have been on Action Comics lately. When somebody jumps off a book and somebody else comes in, I know about that a few months ahead of time usually. And so, like, for example, when, when Riccardo Federici jumped off of Action Comics and Dale Eaglesham came on, that was a big change. And I made that the issue in which it was like Midnighter's perspective the whole way. Like Clark was hardly in it. It was mostly Midnighter's story. Like there's these little things I try to write to the changes. I try to have every issue have those moments like we talked about, those touchstone Superman moments where they, you hear the fanfare and you shake your fist and you're like, F yeah, Superman, this is what I want. I do make I care about every single issue in that way, but I care more about the stories that are going to outlast the monthlies and just be the thing that people come back to for hopefully generations.
Very nice.
Yeah, I've always, for a couple of years now, when we're chatting with friends and stuff and on other podcasts, I'm like, Superman has never really had his Hush storyline that you could like put on the shelf and you could hand that to anybody and that's your intro to Batman. And I feel like in the modern era, Superman, it really hasn't had that. And it sounds like you and Joshua Williamson, who I always want to call Joshua Williams for some reason, and I feel bad about that. But Josh and Dan and Tom are going to give that to us and give that to the future and to a certain extent as well. Like this is going to be the run that 10 years from now, when someone's like, who's Superman, you can hand them this. And it really sounds like you're not purposely going for it, but it sounds like that's where it's going to end up.
I hope so. Yeah, that's kind of, I think Josh and Jamal are crushing it on Superman. I just got my first look of the full art from that book, and God, the art is unbelievable. And I mean, Rafa Sandoval is crushing it just as much on Action right now. So yeah, I think both of these books are going to be what you're describing, where we're telling really cool stories in Metropolis with the full cast, and it's just a really exciting time.
Very nice. We do have we have a super chat question that I'll be putting up on the screen there from Bradford Hogue asking, will you be doing any work with Superman and the Legion of Superheroes crossing over?
Not in my book. Mm-hmm. Sometimes some people ask about the House of L that we did in Future State and whether there's going to be a crossover there. And I will say that I would love to do that. I would love to do like a time travel thing that involved the House of L. But we'll see how long they let me. I've got a laundry list. I'm kind of like starting to feel like Guillermo del Toro. Like these 150 movies that I'm going to get to eventually. So we'll see how long I live and how long they let me stay on the book.
Nice, very nice. Okay, we've got a guest caller who is going to come on and chat and have a quick question. So Tevye, he's got his blanket wrapped around him, we're going to bring him in just quickly. and see if he's ready to ask his question. Here we go. Welcome to the show, Tevya.
What's up, Tevi? How are you?
Yep. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. How's everything going?
Good. Doing good.
What's your question?
Yeah, my question is, I know you already asked the question before, I just wondering, with the upgrade at the with the war shut now over, I'm just wondering, I know you said it's impossible to undo benefit junk area, but I still maintain that maybe we could comment, is there a way to get both young John Kent and Tina under just in the same image, like kind of do a split of two John Kent? Is that a way to comment that type of story in your book, or no?
You're saying you'd like two John Kents? Is that what you're saying?
Kind of, yeah. But again, we have the young John we all love, a 10-year-old boy, before Ben age him up and have him, but he still be with family.
Well, that's kind of like what Dan's doing. Isn't he telling stories? Dan Jurgen's going to be telling stories about a young John Kent.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're doing.
It's past.
No, you're right. Okay, so all right. So in all seriousness, please forget I was laughing because people just love talking about this and it's been going on for so long. But the thing with John Kent is that as soon as I came onto the book, the whole thing, John's future had already been settled. Like it was already gonna, like Tom already had his plans for what he was going to do with the character, everything he was going to do. There was all the stuff he'd been through with Legion, things he was going to do with Legion, things he was going to do in Superman Son of Kal-El. One of those things, of course, was him coming out as bisexual, but there were lots of other stories as well. And yeah, anyway, he's been through a lot of stuff. And if we were to quote unquote one more day, John, referring to the Spider-Man thing where they just kind of like poofed it away. If we were to do that, we would be undoing all those stories that happened since then. We'd be screwing over not just Tom Taylor, but everyone who'd read any of his books and all that time. Like none of that happened. Nothing that happened in Legion would have happened. It would literally be by erasure, like taking a bisexual character and making them vanish, taking them back to an age before those things happened. It just would have been, I acknowledge that it was not a popular decision. And however, to undo it would have been a bigger mistake than the initial, thing. So there were lots and lots of reasons why it would not happen with or without my help. Like even if I pitched them the idea, like, hey, we should make John 10 again. Whether that be through some kind of magic stuff or a discovery of another John someplace else, or some multiversal, whatever. No matter what happened, it would have made all the other stuff that happened bullshit. Okay. So there were lots of reasons why we kind of can't go back. But one thing I did really miss was seeing the relationship between Superman, Lois, and John as a young boy, making all the kind of dumb mistakes kids make when he's like frying cats and like trying to figure out how to do stuff on the farm. All those things that were just really fun. Seeing him on roller coasters, and I wanted to get back to all that. It's not so much about John. It's about the stories. It's about the feelings that those stories gave us. I'm going to make another analogy, and I'm sorry to go on about this so long, but I feel like it's a big deal. And I'm hoping that everyone on Twitter is watching, so we can just kind of put this to bed. But when I was on my first Alien arc, I discovered that. So all of my stuff I do for Alien goes through not just Marvel, but also 20th Century. Everyone 20th Century looks over that stuff too to make sure it all fits the Alien brand. And I discovered that anything that has not already happened in an Alien film, they don't want to see it in the comic either. They just all they want is like the original dinner scene with John Hurt over and over and over and over again. That's all they want. They want to see chest bursters bust out of a dude's chest, just like they did in the first movie, because everyone loved the first movie, so they'll love this one too. But what those kinds of notes don't understand is that or don't take into account is that they're not trying to just see the one cool thing happen over and over. You're trying to recapture that same feeling of horror and mystery, and you're trying to recapture that feeling in the reader or the viewer. So I'm trying to recapture the magic of the Superman, John Kent, Lois Lane relationships, without undoing a big important piece of canon. Also, side note, the thing that happened with John made possible, kind of added a more complex layer to Superman that we didn't have before. Superman now has a deep regret that makes him kind of sad. It kind of haunts him, and Lois Lane too. And now it's going to make things a little more complicated with John and the Super Twins, and and Clark is all up in the middle of that, and it makes it kind of makes for drama. Sometimes we see bad things or unfortunate things happen to characters that we love, and it allows for these really powerful stories. And I think that the aging up of John is a prime example of that, where something unfortunate happened to somebody that we care about. And, what are our favorite characters going to do now after suffering this loss? So that would be my answer about why we're going to leave John alone as far as his age.
I think that's a pretty definitive answer. So thank you, Tevye, for your question, and thank you for coming on the show. And hopefully we've put that to bed. And
sincerely, Tevye, thank you for the question. I'm not upset about it at all, and I only laugh because I hear about it so much. And I think you and I have talked about it once before. And Tevye came to a panel that I did. I want to say New York Comic-Con, and he was there, and he was cool to meet him in person. He has his own podcast or channel, and I appreciate his passion. I really do appreciate that people give a shit. I prefer
100%.
that to just kind of being apathetic about it. So I appreciate the question.
No, and appreciate the time you took to give the answer.
Are you saying that fans on the internet are opinionated and will ask you questions over and over again?
So,
I am shocked.
I'm looking for the comment here. So you're saying there's a chance?
They're not going to let go of it. That's very good.
It's like a guy in high school, like girls breaking up with him, and she's like, "Well, we could still be friends." So there's still a chance,
right? Like a High Fidelity, John Cusack.
It's a great comparison.
Can't remember her name. You bitch, let's work it out.
Very good. I don't know where we're at, but I'm going to ask the next question, Michael. Let's see here. Who is your favorite Superman-related character to write that isn't Superman?
Bibbo.
There you go, Michael.
Yes! Bibbo is the greatest character ever.
He's great, right?
Just amazing from top to bottom, and the background, like why Jerry Ordway created that character, is even more fascinating.
I love Bibbo. I really do. I could write him forever. Although I will say I really liked writing Midnighter too, and I know that Midnighter is not traditionally a Superman adjacent character, but he kind of is now. So I had a great time writing him. Manchester Black as well. Honestly, all of them, dude. I mean, like Lex Luthor is so fun, and I love something that stuck out to me even as a reader of fiction, like way back. I had a kind of a modest library in this little town that did not have an abundance of books, but they did have a lot of Stephen King.
Cool.
And in some of his books, it's striking how much all the different characters sound like each other. And other ones, that is not the case. And some that kind of stuck out to me even as a kid. I was like, these characters are all strangely witty. It was, and that always that's still with me, like something I try to avoid. And I just threw shade at Stephen King. And I didn't mean to. But obviously he's a genius, and there's other books in which that doesn't happen. But now it's something I look for kind of in other books as well. Like whenever I see characters speak like each other, it kind of takes me out of it. It takes me out of it kind of breaks the spell a little bit.
Well, no one speaks like Bibbo.
Exactly. Bibbo's got such a voice, such a clear voice. So that's what makes him so fun. And Midnight are kind of the same way. I feel like he just loves to fight so much. And there's absolutely no filter on him. He's not afraid of anything. And it's just, there's there's this in your face, like just kind of like shoving a dude in the chest kind of thing happening every time he says anything. So yeah, it's really fun.
I was kind of fascinated that Manchester Black was in the Authority, or in this version of the Authority, I guess I should say, as he was created to be a character to kind of poke fun at the Authority, but
Yeah.
no one has that context anymore because it's not 2001, so
Right, I know.
like everything's on the table.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't my place to question it. It was already like it. I kind of liked the Grant put him in there. But I mean, those books also, those books were in my own blind spot too back then. I had to kind of pick up on Manchester more recently. But Manchester's another one that's really fun to write, like aspects of Constantine, but also, I mean, mostly, I mean, part of it is the British dialect, but most of it is just the like the punk rock kind of, Nazi punks F off kind of attitude. Like that was really, because I know Constantine's a character I know extremely well, like way better than Manchester Black or anyone else. So, I mean, one challenge was to kind of keep Hellblazer and Manchester Black separate, because I just hear Constantine, so clearly, and Manchester's just like a little different. So it was fun.
We've got a super chat question that I'll get to, and then Michael, I know you've got one about an action figure that you want to ask, so we'll get to this one first. From Bradford again, asking, will you be using Power Girl as a connected member of the Superman family? Will she interact with Supergirl? Both characters are important.
Currently, she's not in this action arc, but she is getting her own backup story written by Leah Williams and drawn by Marguerite Savage. I mean, no matter how many super family characters I put in the book, there would always be questions about somebody's favorite who's not in it. Like it's a lot. There was an image that Rafa sent back that has them all on the same panel. I'm like, damn, dude, there's a lot of them. And like the way, and it was a big panel, but it still seemed full. I was like, did I make a mistake here? And I'm just having to kind of keep that in mind throughout the scripting process. Like, don't overcrowd the book with 8 or 9 S shields. We got to figure out a way to kind of keep everyone in their place and not oversaturate the market. And Power Girl would have been one too many. But we are going to see her in the backups, and if I have an opportunity to bring them together, especially her and Kara, like this universe's Kara, that would be really, really fun.
So, what did you think of McFarlane Toys making a figure of the Warworld future state, whatever however you want to refer to it, complete with the shield and the axe? Was that cool to see?
It doesn't get any cooler than that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I could not have been more thrilled. I was so stoked to see that thing, dude. And now they're putting out a Mongol too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a Superboy coming out, and it's just so dope. I was really excited.
Yeah, that Mongol is going to be one of the big figures too. It's going to be like one of the $40 ones, so that thing's going to tower over everything else.
I know.
As it kind of should.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, we're coming towards the end. We've got a bit of a lightning round of questions that Michael put together. Mike, I'll let you take lead on that because they're your questions that you put together.
Yeah, these are completely silly. They're not meant to be like we're not meant to trap you so that later on Twitter we could make hay of it. But okay, George Reeves or Christopher Reeve?
Christopher Reeve.
Okay. Lois and Clark or Smallville?
We're talking TV shows, right?
Yes. Yeah.
See, that's a trap because I have not seen Smallville much, but Dean Cain's in the other one.
Fair enough.
I mean, having only seen, I mean, I did see bits and pieces of Smallville, but since I saw every episode of Lois and Clark as it came out, I'll say Lois and Clark.
Okay. Favorite Superman villain, just period, just total, this one's at the top.
Given recent events and how invested in him I am, oh, damn, dude, I don't know, because I've got Metallo all up in my head now, too. I guess I've got to say Mongol.
All right.
I think you've answered this one already, but...
Yeah, well, but it's a fair one. Hans Zimmer theme or John Williams theme?
John Williams all the way.
Okay.
I mean,
I
all the
have to
way.
say, your constant referencing of the shirt rip makes me happier than that's one of my things. Like I love Superman as a character. I love the deep and intellectual things you can talk about him. But man, that shirt rip just gets me every time. Like it's like a
I
Hulk
know.
out
Like,
almost.
I
Like
mean,
you got to see it.
I've only just barely been able to start talking about that again, and it's exciting. Like it just feels, it makes it feel like we've made the right decision. Like being able to have that back just feels so awesome.
Favorite Daily Planet character?
I mean, Lois counts, right?
Yeah, Lois counts.
So yeah, well, it's got to be Lois then.
Well, Clark Kent counts, so hey.
Oh, I suppose that's true.
But
Well,
seriously, outside of those two, who were you most excited to write? Was it Perry? Was it Jimmy? Was it Steve Lombard?
The only ones that I have the only ones that I have real feelings for would be Jimmy and Perry. I guess I don't care as much about the others, as not as much. And like I mean, they all have their place for sure, and there's a lot of really fun interactions with Clark and Steve. But of that crew, not counting Clark and Lois, I guess I'd say Jimmy.
Good point.
Okay. If you've seen both of these, Superman 2, Lester cut or Donner cut?
Donner cut.
There you go.
Ah,
Very
all
good.
right.
Is there anything before we let you go that you want to leave fans with? Anything that we haven't touched on that you thought, hey, I need to make a mention of this?
Man, I don't know. I'm just so excited. I'm so excited for what's coming. God, I don't know. I think we've represented well our shared love of all things Superman and excitement for the books that are coming up. I think that the different books are all going to have their own voice, and I hope that readers find one that they like. Hopefully they'll buy and love all three. I think Josh's book is going to feel an awful lot like the animated series, in my opinion.
Nice.
Like Josh's excitement for his love of the animated series like really shines through, and even kind of the art. Like Jamal's, it's very different, of course, from the animated series art, but something about the sleekness to Superman's mask that kind of reminds me of the old streamlined Superman of the show. It just kind of shines in that similar way. And mine, there's a little more danger to the villains and a little more like architecture to I don't know, it's just different. It just feels a little more three-dimensional, and like every issue is kind of like you see the puzzle box kind of growing, and Josh's book is just so fun. And Tom's book just, I mean, Tom, everything Tom writes feels like Tom. And I don't know, I'm really excited for everyone to see all three series begin. I just couldn't be happy with what we're doing, and I feel like we're all very much on the same page, flying the same direction, and it just feels awesome. I mean, right down to the editors, everyone's so excited for what's coming. So please stay tuned, and I hope you all love it because we're loving it.
Yeah, no, I mean, the smiles on Michael and my, I think it's big for both of us when we say, and I think Mind the Gap in the comments says it the best. Superman is in good hands. So we feel very comfortable and confident with where you guys are going. It's really exciting times. Like Michael says, it feels like going home again in a way with having the books, from what you're talking about, being so well enmeshed as far as, there's a plan moving forward for all the books. And it just seems like while they're flying in the same direction, but with all having their own kind of voice, it really bodes well for the future. We're very excited. Michael, to let you know, Phil hasn't been reading the Superman books for a while, for a couple of years. The John Byrne era, the Triangle era, was really his thing, and I think it's kind of come through in the interview tonight. But he has recently caught up on your run and is super excited and is back into buying the books. And yep. I'll let you say the rest, Mike. I'm speaking for you, but I'm excited.
I took like 3 years off, and it feels petulant, but at the same time, if something's not bringing you joy, you shouldn't invest time in it because that's just going to make just going to make for bad feelings. I've had that happen before, but I've been reading the Superman books since 1987. And when I saw back in October all of the, the New York Comic-Con panel was really what made me go, maybe I should do this. So I threw the 3 titles on my pull list at the comic shop. And then like a week later, y'all revealed that Clark Kent's coming back. It's like, okay, everything, this was supposed to happen. So,
Awesome,
I love that I get to come home again, and be excited, because there have been times where that wasn't there when reading the books.
I totally get it. I totally get it. And I'm sorry that hasn't always been super fun for you, but I mean, I've had other books that also kind of became something different than I kind of wanted to see. And the books that we love still exist, right? So we read the ones that we love. There's there've been a lot of, like, very often I'll go back and read. I always kind of feel like I'm catching up as far as, I just kind of feel ignorant compared to a lot of other people that I know as far as all the different runs that they know. I mean, I just voraciously read everything I could when I was a kid, and I still subscribed to some comics all the way up through my first year or so of college. And then when I was in school, I just kind of sold my soul to the practice room, and I didn't really read for fun for a while. And then when I got back, I didn't get back into it really until I had a brother who wanted to draw comics professionally, and I'd fallen out of it, and I was like, well, let's figure it out. I don't even know what I don't know about the comics industry, but let's educate ourselves. I'll write some stuff for you to draw just for the hell of it, just to build a portfolio. And I went into a comic shop for the first time in forever and just completely got the bug again. And I always feel like I'm still kind of catching up and finding things that I missed while I was away. But I'll tell you, there's an awful lot of Superman stories I didn't like. I mean, there's a lot of them where he just seems like kind of an asshole, or, well, that's it mostly. Sometimes he comes across like a real egomaniac, or he just says something that I know he wouldn't say. Yeah. Whenever I see something like that happen, like he comes across like a jock or something, in my, like, there's some kind of this switch that clicks. I'm like, well, that's fan fiction now, and I just go back to the ones that I know to be true. Like All-Star Superman is true to me, and Superman for All Seasons is true to me, and even key moments of Kingdom Come feel like the real Superman. When he goes into the bar and straightens everyone out, and he's be more than this, be better than this, and everyone just like shuts up and listens. Like, that's like those moments. Even now, again, I'm getting chills just thinking about how Superman. That's what it should be. Yeah. Those are the moments I'm trying to capture in the run.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being our guest tonight. We really appreciated you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be on our show. We've loved it. It's been one of the best interviews we've done in a long time. We've been doing this show for quite a long time, so it's been awesome having you on. Looking forward to what's coming up. But yeah, just thank you once again for not only being on the show, but writing Superman the way we love him.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Anything you want to say, Michael, before we finish off?
No, I'm just excited. I'm gonna start reading the second Warworld trade probably about 30 minutes after we get off this call. So awesome, I'm just excited to get back to it.
Excellent. Thanks again, Philip, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, guys. Hope to see you again.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. So, folks, that's our Superman homepage live for tonight. Really appreciate you joining us, being part of the show. Don't forget, if you've missed part of the show, want to tuned in late, want to catch it all over again, you'll be able to do so on supermanhomepage.com and our YouTube channel. But Michael and I will be back next week for another episode of Superman Homepage Live on December 5th, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time. Look forward to talking to you then. Don't forget, we will be doing our end-of-month segments next week. And, of course, we didn't get to them this week, so we'll get to those when we return next week. But check out supermanhomepage.com for all your daily news updates on everything surrounding the Man of Steel. On behalf of myself, Michael Bailey, and Phillip Kennedy Johnson, thank you for watching Superman Homepage Live, brought to you by supermanhomepage.com. Good night.